So you keep returning gently to yourself, to your bare naked awareness, moment after moment when you remember, and then it becomes your home at some point. That's another breakthrough. That breakthrough practically is liberation. That's liberation, actually. Yes.
Could you say that that's almost as a death and a rebirth constantly going on?
A what?
A death and a rebirth, in a sense?
I don't know how to define how or describe that moment or that change or switch between the back and forth and the permanent establishing in your nature, which is somehow what you are mentioning as what I am talking about, right? So, what is the case is that for a while, this Nisarga Yoga consists on returning back to our nature, while the tendency of the mind or the consciousness, right, that's the tendency of consciousness, is to again returning to mind, to thought, to get lost in thought, fascinated. Why? Because consciousness has not yet recognized itself deeply enough. That's why it needs to visit itself again and again and again and again, until there's a threshold somehow, which I say, I don't know how to describe when it happens. It happens when it happens. There's a threshold that is crossed at some point when consciousness realizes itself and cannot be deluded anymore by thought. That's what I call all the times the dropping of the mind. As we know, some teachers, including Ramana, describe it as the death of the mind, the destruction of the mind. It's not a literal destruction. It's a change, complete change of its role, complete change of its functioning, complete substitution, replacement of its functioning. From being autonomous, the mind, because consciousness gives its power to it, to mind, delegates on the mind, and the mind runs wild, autonomously, which is a state of ignorance. From that to the mind becoming the servant of consciousness, because consciousness has assumed the power, has assumed its own reins, because consciousness has awakened to itself, has realized itself, and then mind becomes just an instrument. So it does not run autonomously anymore. It's completely surrendered, silenced, relaxed at all times. At all times. And it's only active when consciousness turns it on, which is completely different from the normal functioning, the usual functioning before realization. Where, as I said a moment ago, consciousness, not knowing itself, has delegated its power and its energy into the mind, and the mind runs wild, searching for truth in its own garden, completely lost. You see. So there is during the Nisarga yoga practice, or the practice of self-avoidance, or the Atmanishta, however we want to call it, there is a back and forth, because consciousness is visiting itself but still not yet realized itself. It will, just by visiting itself. At some point it takes over. At some point takes over, is what I said moments ago when I said, at some point it becomes your home. You don't return to mind anymore. It has taken over. Consciousness has taken over the whole thing. It's resting in itself, is totally self-satisfied, complete in itself, and thought has become clearly ephemeral, a pale representation of reality, totally abstract, totally delusional, we could say even. We understand thought at that point. We understand what's thought. And thought is so many things that I just said. It's a device for consciousness to delude itself. Also, it's a tool of creation. It's how the world appears, through thought. Because thoughts are the creator of manifested reality. Concepts create things. Concepts create reality. So thought is many things, but we see at that point what's thought, and we are not deluded by it. So we don't search truth through thought. Because truth is beyond description. It's the infinite, beyond all the interpretations, all the shapes, all the points of view, all the angles. Truth is the infinite power, which is simultaneously formless and the source of all, and the substance of all. And that's us, that's consciousness. So, self-realization, or consciousness realizing itself, not through the initial awakening, but by its own full self-realization, its own full self-establishment, by that, by consciousness realizing itself, intelligence, the intelligence that lives in that consciousness, which is its intrinsic attribute or quality, has revealed or reveals the nature of reality, the nature of itself and the nature of thought, which is a function of consciousness. It's not that thought is some enemy, some strange, some strange add-on that the demiurge throw to us just to make things difficult. No. There's no demiurge creating this duality between consciousness and thought, this manichaeistic division. No. Thought becomes a feature of consciousness. It has always been, only that we didn't realize. Thought is consciousness' creative tool. then it takes its place. It's not that it's wrong, it's not that we should terminate thought, but when thought is understood and mind surrenders that way, mind keeps quiet. It totally changes its function, as I said. It remains calm. And consciousness rests in its own simplicity.